Welcome to the Soft Genetics webinar series on Mutation Surveyor software. This video reviews how to identify the presence of, and then report, an example of a more complex indel event, the Delins. Working with complex variants is, well, complicated. Even the very definition of a complex indel may vary or have exceptions depending on the particular field of research, practice guidelines, or even institutional SOPs. In this webinar, a complex indel is considered to be any insertion or deletion type of event other than the single insertion or single deletion event, and which could be called differently depending on the type of analysis being performed and the preferred nomenclature. The term indel may be used in this video to indicate any non-specific insertion or deletion event. The focus of this presentation is on the Delins event. Generally speaking, a Delins event is when a section of nucleotides has been replaced by a greater or lesser number of other nucleotides. The section that was replaced is considered the deletion event, and the insertion event is considered to be the replacement nucleotides or nucleotide. Mutation calling is automatically performed by Mutation Surveyor without making any assumptions and without bias of research field or nomenclature preference, which results in higher confidence calls and minimal false positives and false negatives. This may result in some unexpected calls initially, especially for complex variants that could be called a number of ways. However, Mutation Surveyor allows for the editing of these automated calls to be in such a way as to accommodate reporting of certain specific complex variants, such as the Delins. To accomplish this, we first need to identify the separate events. We then edit the call to include both the insertion and deletion events, and then finally create a custom report, which features the ability to display these together as a single Delins call. Let's take a closer look at each step in the software. We are going to start with a project that has already been ran using default parameters. If not yet familiar with setting up and running a project, please view the available webinar titled Mutation Surveyor Introductory Overview. To view the mutation calls in the sample, double-click on the cell for that call. A common example of when a group of mutation calls can be considered as a Delins is when you have a called homozygous indel adjacent to single substitution calls. This is what we see here in this example. Mutation Surveyor calls a homozygous deletion of the T at reference position 234, and then G to A and A to T substitutions at positions 235 and 236 respectively. Collectively, these could be represented as a Delins event. To do this, we can first consider the event as a whole. The event spans positions 234 through 236, reference nucleotides TGA. In the sample trace files, these three nucleotides have been replaced by AT. Therefore, the Delins event here is a deletion of TGA and an insertion of AT. Before we can add these indel events, we first need to delete the existing mutation calls here. In the bottom mutation table, right-click each mutation call and select Delete Mutation. Alternatively, you can select the desired call and then use Ctrl-D on the keyboard as a shortcut for the deletion, or even use Ctrl and right-click the desired position in the mutation electropherogram and click OK. Make sure this is completed for the forward directional calls and reverse directional calls. Now we can add the individual deletion and insertion events. The order in which each is added does not matter. In the mutation electropherogram, hold down the Control button and left-click the mobility line at the position at which you want to add the indel. We can leave the type set as deletion. The start index of GenBank should be 234 and mutation letters are TGA. Add any comments as needed or annotation regarding this indel and click OK. Next, let's add the insertion event to the same trace file. Use the same procedure we just followed to open the dialog to add the indel. Change the mutation type to insertion. The start index of GenBank can be anywhere in the range of the deletion if you plan on reporting this as a Delins event. I will use position 235. Enter the nucleotides of the insertion event, which in this case is AT. Again, add any comments or annotation as preferred and click OK when done. Finally, these steps need to be repeated for the reverse directional trace file. This call is ready for reporting. Before we go to the report, what would the same event look like if it was heterozygous in nature? We can take a look. For the best view of heterozygous indel events, we can open the Heterozygous Indel Detection tool. If not yet familiar with this tool or heterozygous indel detection in Mutation Surveyor, please review our webinar, Het Indel Detection. When more than one heterozygous indel event is present, Mutation Surveyor automatically calls the net difference. For example, a 3 base pair deletion event overlapping a 2 base pair insertion event would result in an automated call of a 1 base pair deletion, which is what we see here. However, we do not know yet that we are looking at a possible Delins event. If we look down at the bottom mutation electropherogram, we can see 2 large peaks under the first 2 nucleotides of the mutation alleles. This indicates that these 2 nucleotides of the sample allele, A and T, do not match the reference nucleotides of GA at this location. Since the remaining peaks of the mutation allele match the reference, we can conclude that the span of the event should actually be from reference position 234 through 236. This means that the reference nucleotides of TGA are being replaced in one allele of the sample by the nucleotides AT. To look at this in the terms of a Delins event, we would consider the deletion portion to be the TGA from the reference and the insertion portion to be the AT nucleotides indicated by the deconvolution results. So let's update the call. Here, we don't need to delete any automated call as we can simply edit the existing one. To do this, click the Mutation button. The Add Edit Het Indel dialog will display the automated call, which we are going to first edit. Since the automated call we see here is a deletion, we can use this to add the deletion call that we want. We will leave the mutation and mutation type sections as they are. Since the Het Indel tool only utilizes the reference trace file and not any kind of GenBank file, the position to enter for the indel location needs to be relative to your reference trace. For this project, the position numbers just so happen to be the same. For the start index of reference, look in the top trace of the tool and find the location of where the indel event should start. For the deletion event, you can enter that single start position or enter the full range by entering the event start coordinate, followed by an underscore, followed by the end coordinate. Next, enter the mutation letters of the reference trace that are not in the sample. For this example, the mutation letters should be TGA. You can also add comments in the comments field and annotation in the bottom of the dialog. The Add Edit Het Indel dialog can support 2 events, so we can go ahead and add this insertion event without closing this dialog. To do this, we use the Mutation dropdown to select Mutation 2. The type will be automatically switched to heterozygous insertion, which is what we want. Just like with the homozygous insertion addition, we can add this insertion event anywhere in the range of the deletion if we will be reporting this as a Delins. I will enter this insertion to occur between reference position 234 and 235, making sure to include that underscore in between the 2 coordinates. The mutation letters for the insertion event are AT. I can add comments and annotation, and now that I have both events entered here, I'm going to click OK. Click Yes to confirm the call that was entered. We can now see both individual calls displayed at the top of the window. We will now have to repeat this process for the reverse trace file. Since we are working with a paired sample, we can quickly switch to view the deconvolution of the reverse file by toggling the selection at the top to Reverse. Verifying the presence of the same events in the reverse direction increases the confidence of the call being real. For heterozygous indel events, the forward directional trace file provides visualization of the event start site, and the reverse directional trace file provides visualization of the event end site. This can be helpful to confirm event length and nucleotides involved. For this reverse directional trace file, we can see that the automated call is a single nucleotide deletion of the A at position 236. Since we are looking at the reverse direction, This position indicates that the end coordinate for the deletion event is 236, which agrees with our call added to the forward directional trace file. Just like we did in the forward direction, we can look at the shifted Part 2 mutation trace and the mutation electropherogram to determine the nucleotides that do not match the reference, and therefore identify the start site for the indel event in the reverse direction. From this inspection, we can see that the deconvolution of alleles in the reverse trace suggests the same event that we added to the forward directional trace. Using the mutation button to open the Add Edit Het Indel dialog, we can edit the existing call and add the insertion event for our Delins. We can confirm the same indel calls are listed at the top of the window for the reverse direction. When ready, close the Het Indel tool by using the X in the top right corner. Click Yes to save the edits that were just made. The mutation table in the GAD will update to display the calls that we entered in the Het Indel tool. We're now ready to generate our report. We will use the custom report for our Delins mutation calls. To start, go to Reports, Custom Report. This opens the Custom Report Settings dialog. All of the settings pertaining to how the mutation call is displayed are located on the Mutation tab, so we will need to select this tab. In the Display Information section, which is the bottommost section on this tab, make sure the selection is set to one field, and then check the box directly below next to Report the deletion and insertion as Delins. Adjust any other settings for the report as needed. If not yet familiar with the available settings for the custom report, please view our Custom Report Options webinar. When your settings have been set to your preference, click OK at the bottom of the dialog to generate the report. The report shows the Delins call for both samples, with the heterozygous event called in sample A and the homozygous event called in sample B. This has been a short demonstration on how to utilize Mutation Surveyor software to report your complex indel events as Delins. For more information or to request a free 35-day trial, please visit softgenetics.com or send an email to info@softgenetics.com. All technical inquiries may be sent via email to our technical support group at tech_support@softgenetics.com. Thank you for joining me, and please be sure to check out our other technical webinars.